Uh, so first of all, just a little bit of context. The reason why we change our strings is when they get old, they lose tone. In particular, they lose the high frequencies, and so they start sounding dead. They start sounding like rubber. Um, and then also, they're actually harder to tune, which did not make sense to me for a long time. I heard this that like tuners can't tune your string as well. And that just made no sense to me. If anything, it seemed like the tuner should have an easier time hearing the fundamental frequency of your string, which is like the lowest frequency you hear there. That frequency, incidentally, is mixed in with this frequency, this one, that one. All those notes are mixed together. We just hear the lowest note most prominently, but all those notes are mixed together to create that wonderful, rich sound that we hear when we pick our open E string. So anyway, a dead string, you're going to hear less of those overtones. And it seemed like, tuners should hear that more easily. It turns out, though, that like gunk and irregularities on your string make your string vibrate in a weird way. It should be like a smooth kind of sine wave kind of movement. And the string is actually vibrating not just like this, but also in two equal parts, and also in 3 equal parts and 4 equal parts. It vibrates into all these complex subdivisions of itself all at the same time, which also helps create that rich sound. Isn't that cool? So when you got gunk on your string, it interferes with the string's ability to vibrate in an orderly way. And so that's why our tuners have a hard time hearing an old string and giving you a proper reading on its pitch, because it's giving weird pitches. Tone and tuning issues are 2 good reasons to change your strings. Eventually, they're going to fall apart too. But, detecting those problems with your string can be difficult. It's kind of like the boiling frog fable where, if you put a frog in boiling water, this is such a violent metaphor, but anyway, throw a frog in boiling water, it's going to jump back out again. But if you put a frog in tepid water, as the fable goes anyway, and you turn on the heat slowly, the frog doesn't notice that it's being boiled to death. Likewise, with our strings, we don't really notice when they're losing tone. We only notice when we finally change them. Oh my God, my guitar sounds so much brighter now. So here are 2 easy to notice indications that your strings need to be tuned. One is that look for discoloration near your nut. So this is typically a part of the strings that you're not going to touch. And so as the strings oxidize, that rust is going to stay on the string, whereas other parts of the string, the rust is going to get rubbed off and kind of oiled by the oils in your finger. So this guitar actually needs restringing. I don't know if my camera is going to focus well, but you might be able to see near the nut here how the wound strings are slightly darker color as they get close to the nut. And then where I place my fingers, they're a little brighter looking. So you're going to see that, especially on guitars that have brass or phosphor bronze wound strings, the kind of darker looking strings. You don't notice it as much on the electric guitar strings that look more silvery. And you see them mostly on the winding of those darker strings. So that's one indication. If you've been neglecting your guitar playing too, the whole string might feel kind of sticky from rust. It's almost a sticky sensation. It's a lot of friction. I hate that feeling on guitars. When I pick up someone else's guitar, if I visit someone, they're like, oh, can you play the song? We have a guitar in the closet. And it hasn't been touched in 5 years. It's the same feelings like picking up a really rusty chain. It almost like irritates your skin. Anyway, I find it tactily very unpleasant to play guitars like that. And so you may feel that too on your strings if you neglect your guitar for too long. So that's one indication, discoloration. And also, here's an easy test. Take the thinnest wound string on your guitar, which on an acoustic guitar is typically the 3rd string. On an electric, it's typically the 4th string. Stick your fingers under the string and then run them up the neck. Eventually, you're not going to be able to get your fingers comfortably up any farther. It's going to get pinned against the fretboard. But, around like the 12th fret, 9th fret, you can fit your fingers under the string. And if you feel any bumps under your fingers, those bumps are created by the winding of the string hitting the frets, like when you strum it hard or when you're fretting the guitar up high on the neck. And over time, the thin winding wire, the wound wire that's wound around the core of your wound string is going to wear away and create a little dent. And so you can feel those dents as the string is worn on the frets. And that's another indication that your strings are starting to die. In general, I try to restring my guitar anywhere from 3 to 6 months at a time. I do a student concert every 6 months. And so if I haven't changed my strings since my last student concert, I make sure I do it before the next student concert. So that's kind of my routine. And I noticed that the guitar sounds quite a bit better when I change the strings. But I don't like the sound of totally new strings either. They're a little too bright for me. I kind of like them broken in a tiny bit, maybe after I've played them a couple of weeks. That's when I think they sound ideal.
Follow up?
Yeah.
Any special? What strings would you recommend?
Boy, early on, I just kind of found some strings I liked, and I am not a gearhead. I'm not the kind of person who like optimizes every last bit of my gear. And my impression is most strings sound similar, in terms of like comparing brands of strings. I think probably a guitar teacher early on recommended Diodarios for my acoustic. So I went with Diodarios when I bought electrics. And the phosphor bronze winding on acoustic strings will give you a slightly warmer sound than brass. And conveniently, the color of the winding reflects the tone that they give. These slightly darker, kind of brownish looking strings have a slightly warmer sound. The brighter brass has a little bit brighter sound. And a gross generalization is that I've noticed that you tend to see Martin guitars strung more with phosphor bronze because they tend to be played by people who want that warmer sound. Taylor guitars, which are a brighter sounding guitar in general, tend to have brass wound strings on them more often for the same reason. Those players tend to like a little bit of a brighter sound. A more important decision, though, I think, is the string gauge. People in general think that a heavier gauge string has richer tone. That has been debated to some extent. The difference between medium and light gauge string on an acoustic guitar is very slight, I think. And so a lot of it comes down to personal preference and play style. Definitely, if you want to bend your acoustic guitar strings, you need to get lighter gauge strings than normal, which means like light gauge strings, because it's very hard to bend medium gauge acoustic guitar strings. I've never played an acoustic guitar with heavy gauge strings. It's always either been medium or light. Also, if you're playing an antique guitar, it's best to use light gauge strings. Guitars built before, definitely before 1970 or so. The older guitars get, the more delicate their construction is in general. Guitars these days are built like desk chairs because the guitar companies don't want you cashing in on their lifetime warranty. So they make them durable, but they don't quite sound as good because of that. But This was built in 1952 and is a fairly delicate guitar. I only string it with light gauge strings so that it doesn't pull the guitar apart. Hey, I hope you liked this lesson. If you did, please click the like button. You can also subscribe to my channel. And if you really want the good stuff, become a member of Heartwood Guitar. You can click the link below to learn more. Hope to see you there. Take care.